Hi, this is the world's brightest flashlight. Now, we already had a new record holder last year, but this light is almost twice as bright as that one. Now, here's the thing, this is huge, hot, and heavy. So the question is this actually a good flashlight? Now, this video doesn't exist to be an advertisement for this light. I'm actually going to break it down in detail. We're going to look at the real-world performance, the beam quality, the reliability, and the actual usability of this light. This is going to be a real product test. This is a massive 32 emitter LED flashlight. We've got a huge battery pack, a carrying handle, and 3 cooling fans because this guy is so powerful it gets incredibly hot. Now here's the thing, I've used a lot of flashlights, I've used a ton of flashlights, and this is definitely, unquestionably, the brightest and most impressive flashlight that I've used of the bunch. This thing is amazing. I absolutely love using it. It puts a huge grin on my face. And Imalent, they've really done it. They have one-upped themselves. They've almost doubled their record from the previous year, and that was already an incredible flashlight. The SR32, last year's record, the new one. As amazing as this light is, I want to go over a little bit of history first. So in 2019, Imalent released this light. This is the MS18. This was 100,000 lumens. Now, this one was really popular on the internet. A lot of big YouTubers made videos about it, and it held the crown for world's brightest flashlight for 4 years. However, I didn't actually like this one. I found it to have a pretty poor design. It was not built very well, and despite being technically the brightest flashlight at startup, it very quickly lost output. It didn't really perform that well. Kind of a mediocre flashlight, and for a really high price, this didn't really have anything going for it other than being the brightest flashlight in the world, in my opinion. Now, last year in 2023, the MS18 was replaced for the world's brightest light by this. This is the Imalent SR32. And in short, I found this one to have a much better design. It was far more usable and practical. It had a better beam quality, way better performance, as we'll see in a bit, and it was actually brighter. This came in at 120,000 lumens. This year, Imalent's introducing the MS32, which is essentially the same design, but as you can see, it is bigger physically. It doesn't actually look that much bigger on camera, but trust me, this is a lot heftier. And this also has new emitters, so XHP70s instead of XHP35 highs, and we're seeing a significant increase in output with this light. I know what you're wondering. Is this light actually 200,000 lumens? Well, this is a laboratory calibrated integrating sphere that I've been using to take measurements lately. This has been designed specifically to measure flashlights. It's a really awesome product. I'm going to be doing a video on this soon. But the problem is this caps out at 13,000 lumens, and it's not big enough to measure this giant MS32. So that wouldn't work. I had to find a different solution. This is the lux meter that I normally use to measure flashlights. And what I tried to do here was kind of integrate the light within the entire room using a sort of ceiling bounce setup. But I ran into another issue. The MS32 is vastly brighter than the calibrated reference I normally use for these measurements, which exceeded the resolution of this lux meter. So instead, what I had to do is I compared this against the X75, of which I have a reasonably accurate measure and is quite stable. Using this as a baseline, I did measure this to be just over 200,000 lumens on turbo at startup, and after a couple of seconds I was getting 199,000 lumens. And that result was actually very consistent, even regardless of the battery level, which was really great to see. Now, because of the way I got those numbers, you know, what with the margin of error and everything, I would kind of take those with a grain of salt. It's close enough. I feel confident enough to say that this is a 200,000 lumen light, but I don't know the exact numbers, so just bear that in mind. But I will say that my scientifically calibrated eyeballs do consider this to be very bright. So people always ask, you know, what the heck is a flashlight like this useful for? Quite frankly, I have no idea. If you want the brightest flashlight in the world, this is useful for that. If you want to start fires in a more entertaining way, then this is useful for that. If you want a ridiculous paperweight, you know, there are better options. So quite frankly, you don't need this much power. However, sometimes it is nice to have a super bright flashlight, and something like this I think would genuinely be useful for like search and rescue, or if you live on like a big ranch or something where you just need to illuminate a huge area. This can definitely do that. Another thing that people always ask though is battery life. If it's that bright, then the battery must be shot in like 10 seconds, right? And actually no. See, most of these super bright flashlights, they're going to start really high and then they're going to trail off, sometimes really quickly. This guy started off super bright. It dropped, as you expect, but then it hit about 40,000 lumens, and it sustained that evenly for a solid amount of time. The lower modes, of which there are several, were also able to sustain a lot of light for a really good amount of time, and the regulation is great. It holds flat output for a long time. Overall, performance on this guy is simply excellent. It's really good. It's extremely bright for a long time. It's stable output, which isn't true of Imalent's older lights. If we look at them on the graphs, you see that the MS18 in particular has quite poor performance, and the SR32 also does quite well, but the MS32 beats all of them. So these more recent lights from Imalent have been a notable improvement in terms of performance all around, and this guy in particular is exceptional. Ultimately, I ended up really liking the SR32. I think this is genuinely a very good flashlight. I've actually used this a few times on short film sets. We filmed out in the woods overnight, and this proved to be extremely helpful. It was bright enough to illuminate everything, but it was also able to last the entire night. So this is genuinely a very useful tool in that context. So both of these lights do have essentially the same design, and performance is about the same aside from the output difference. However, the size difference does have a pretty significant impact on usability. So the SR32 was already quite a heavy light, and it's a little front heavy. So I do like that it has a carrying handle, unlike the MS18, which did not. Makes this way better. But it's not the most comfortable ergonomic thing to use. If you're going to carry it outside, like this is too big, too heavy for a hike. It's not the worst thing ever. The MS32, on the other hand, definitely tips the scales a little too much. This thing is just very heavy, very cumbersome. It's actually balanced a little bit better, but it's that much heavier where I really just don't want to carry this with me. Yes, it's incredibly bright, but all of these lights are. The SR32 is already incredibly bright. Functionally speaking, if you're actually looking at these as real tools, I find the SR32 to be more practical because it's throwier and it's more portable than the MS32, though the MS32 is brighter. So the other big difference between these two lights are the emitters that are being used. So the MS32 has got Cree XHP70.2 LEDs, which are very floody, very bright. The SR32 has XHP35 highs, which are much more intense. The result is that even though the MS32 is, again, significantly brighter, the SR32 has a much tighter beam and actually throws quite a bit further. Because this light is so bright, it still has that effect of overwhelming floodlight, and as a result, I prefer using this at night because I do get that much more reach out of it. This one, on the other hand, is just a bigger floodlight. It floods light into a wider area, more light. The other thing is that I do prefer the color coming from the SR32. It's actually got a really nice daylight white beam without any notable tint shift or beam artifacts. Really impressed with this guy. The MS32 also looks nice. Actually, yeah, it looks great. It honestly looks about as good as the SR32, just a slightly different beam shape. Really, I'm quite impressed with both of these in terms of the quality of their beams. Imalent did a great job with both of these lights. Now, one feature that Imalent has implemented into all three of these bigger lights is a small OLED screen here on the side. So when you turn the light on, it displays the output level in lumens and then the battery voltage level to kind of give you an idea of how much runtime you have left. I find this to be a very informative and convenient feature, especially on a light that has so many modes like this. I think it's just super cool. I really appreciate it. The MS18 is just kind of a standard flashlight design, so because it's so large, it's not super ergonomic. The button here on the side, there are little lights to illuminate it so you can find it in the dark. However, I found the button kind of finicky in use. It just wasn't a real good user experience. Sometimes it didn't want to activate for whatever reason. The SR32 is built much better. The whole thing is solid aluminum, including the fan housing, much more compact, and significantly, it has a carrying handle. We actually have two buttons this time. So one here on the side, where you'd expect it to be, so you can use it like this, and then there's another button on the side of the handle, which I did find quite convenient, quite ergonomic to use. And the MS32 is the same, but bigger, and because of that, the handle button has been relocated to the front right here, which I actually do find to be more ergonomic. I do prefer that. However, it was also a little easy to accidentally activate when you're just grabbing the light. But this light is just, it's very easy to work with. Now the interface of this light is very simple and very easy to use. You just press the button, of course, to turn it on, press again to turn it off. While on, if you press and hold, it will cycle upwards through the modes until it reaches the top, and then it will drop back down to the bottom. You hear the fans kick in there. The fans will automatically kick in at a certain level. And then at any point, whether the light is on or off, you just double tap for the maximum output. Of course, when you have this many LEDs being pushed that hard with such a powerful driver, it's going to get super hot. And this thing does get extremely hot. So there are 3 fans on the side here to keep it cool. And they do a great job. This light still gets very hot in the hand, make no mistake. But this does a really good job of allowing the light to sustain a very high output. I haven't had any issues with overheating with this light. One thing it does do, however, that I have found with the other Imalent lights, is when I run a full runtime test on this guy, from turbo until dead, the fans will actually shut off before the light itself does, which is a concern because it means the light is going to sit there and cook for about 30 seconds, I think, before it actually turns off where it's not being cooled. So I am a little bit concerned about that, but at least it's not at the maximum power. At that point, it's already dropped down to about 40K lumens, which is still an incredible amount of light. So one of the big issues with Imalent in the past has been reliability. The MS18 was kind of poorly built and had reliability issues. And any of these lights, they're huge, but they're basically hot rods, so the LEDs are being pushed very hard. So one of the big concerns with the SR32 when it came out was that it was actually burning out LEDs. It was running too hard. And in my testing, I got the light after Matt did, after he did a video. I ran a few turbo tests on it, and I actually did have 2 LEDs partially burn out. So that was definitely an issue. Imalent supposedly resolved that issue, and I was supposed to get a replacement for this light. Supposedly it's still on its way. The MS32, coming a year after the SR32, again, Imalent claimed that they resolved that issue. And in my test, I've run turbo on this several times, done several runtime tests on it. I have not had any issues with LEDs burning out. I think what's notable here is these XHP70s, in general, they're much brighter LEDs than the 35 highs, and they can take a lot of current. In terms of build quality, both of these lights are very solid. However, they're only given IP56 waterproof rating, so this is not fully waterproof, and that's presumably due to the fans, just the 3 fans on the side of this light here. And there is questions about the lifespan because these are moving parts, these fans, and I don't see a way to replace them. So that's another thing that you should be aware of, a bit of a longevity issue with this guy. And finally, this is just a giant piece of glass here on the front. I have dropped both of these lights a couple times. Haven't had issues, but that's a big failure point right there that you should definitely be aware of. Both of these lights have proprietary battery packs. So this has this little stainless steel doodad on the back here that you unscrew, and then there's a USB-C charging port. It charges quite quickly. This works totally fine. Normally I do complain about proprietary battery packs and not being able to replace the individual cells. I'm not concerned about it with this guy, mostly because this light is pulling so much power that if you were not careful about cell matching, then you would have a bomb. So Imalent is definitely, they don't want to risk that, and I understand that. However, once this light goes out of production, because it eventually will, they're probably going to take the batteries out of production as well, and that is a major lifespan limitation with this guy, and one reason why I don't like proprietary battery packs. All of these mega bright flashlights that I have, MS32, SR32, MS18, X75, etc., they all have that issue. So, you know, that's just what you're getting into with these lights. Now, one thing I wanted to really like about these Imalent lights are the carrying straps they include. So the straps themselves are very nice, very high quality, they're padded and comfortable, and the way they attach the lights, all 3 of these, makes them very comfortable to carry. As you can see, I've got the strap on the MS18. However, when I got this light, I decided not to put the strap on it because it was just so heavy. I was worried that it was going to end up breaking. And funnily enough, I had been using the SR32 with the strap for months and really enjoying it. And wouldn't you know it, shortly after I made that decision, this strap ended up breaking on me. This little stainless steel piece here, it just had to bear too much stress, and eventually this snapped off right here. This is just connected here on the side. So yeah, Even this light was actually too heavy for Imalent's strap system. The MS32 is definitely too heavy. So unfortunately, I do not recommend the carrying strap on this light. Now, one flashlight that I've had for a while now is the Acebeam X75 with the extended battery tube. Matt did a review of this. I also did my own review of it. This extended tube takes the already awesome X75 and literally doubles the runtime. Now, this is only 80,000 lumens, which is substantially less than the 200K, but the beam pattern between the two of these is very similar. And the X75 is significantly more carryable than the MS32. So honestly, if you're looking for something that's actually practical, they're both massively overkill. But if you're looking for something practical, I do kind of prefer the X75 overall. In general, Acebeam products are very high quality and very reliable. The design of this light is great and it's been very reliable for me. So, you know, we have those reliability concerns with the MS32. It's proven just fine for me. I'm not so worried about it, but I do trust the X75 more. And again, when I'm choosing between which one of the two I'm going to take with me for just about anything realistically, I am going to take this one because it's that much more carryable. That's just my opinion. Both lights are great, and I'm not being paid by either company to say anything. I think this is genuinely a fantastic flashlight. It's well built, it's easy to use, it has fantastic performance, incredibly bright, very good sustained performance, and it has a great beam. There are definitely downsides. Physically, it's just unwieldy. It's huge and it's heavy. It's just not comfortable to use, and the strap system that comes included with it is not sufficient. The cooling system does work well, but it could work better. The X75 has a superior cooling system to any of these because it's actually based off of temperature, whilst to this one, it just turns on at a certain level and then turns off when the battery dies and when the light turns off. So also, I do really like the OLED screen. I think that's super cool. Is this worth $780, $750, whatever it is? Honestly, I think that price is justified. Would I necessarily buy this? No, and the main reason is because I actually still prefer the SR32. Mainly because it's smaller and because the beam is throwier, so you actually get a little more distance out of this. In terms of performance, obviously this is like half as bright, including sustained output, but it's still insanely bright, enough that it kind of doesn't really matter to me in use. And this is cheaper. It's about $680, so still very expensive, but less so than the MS32, meaningfully so. And then of course there is the X75. I keep bringing this light up. I just think it's really well designed. It's a really excellent product. This is about $600 if you're looking for a great high output, high performance light. This is much more carryable than either of the Imalents, especially if you have the small battery tube. The cooling system is better. This is IPX8 rated, a little tougher and a little more durable, more reliable than the Imalents. And yeah, mainly it's just way more carryable. That's really the big thing. So these two are my favorite, the SR32 and the X75. But the MS32 is definitely the most impressive of the bunch. And if you have the money, if you have a use that you can think of for this monstrosity, you won't be disappointed. I think it's definitely worth the money. I'm impressed. I like it. Also, yeah, I have the MS18 here. I don't recommend this light. I don't like it. I think that's it for this video. I hope it didn't come off as much like an advertisement. I really genuinely just love this flashlight. I really was impressed by it, and I mostly have positive things to say, which is kind of a rarity for me. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe and all of that stuff, and you can also leave any questions that you have in the comments down below. I will link a forum post about this light that has more detailed graphs comparing all of these. So please feel free to go check that out, and yeah, good lucks.